The 14 foods considered to be the world's most dangerous. The foods on this list include both common items you may already have in your refrigerator and some surprising discoveries. There are many nutritious items at your grocery store that give you the nutrition you need to live. Additionally, it contains a lot of potentially dangerous foods. You could think of strange meals like pufferfish, which is on the list of potentially harmful foods. But do you also think of common things like hot dogs, cheese, or even chicken breast? Probably not. As it turns out, some of the world's most hazardous foods appear to be fairly harmless, and they could be in your refrigerator right now. First on our list is hot dog. We're not referring to the arguably dubious combination of meats and fillers that is used to manufacture the majority of commercial hot dogs. The main risk associated with these traditional picnic dishes is choking. According to Johns Hopkins Medicine, hot dogs are the main culprit in choking-related injuries in children under 3. About 17% of all choking incidents involve hot dogs. Hard candy, fruits, and nuts are then offered. Choking is made more difficult by the form of hot dog bits and the texture of the meat. Simply put, if you start to choke on them, they are difficult to get down or out of. For their youngest children, parents who are concerned about this risk are advised to chop the hot dogs into extremely little pieces. Next on our list, meat. More than 75% of Escherichia coli poisoning events, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention (CDC), involve cattle and vegetable row crops such leafy greens. According to the data, they are both potentially harmful, and more than 2,000 patients are admitted to hospitals each year as a result of E. coli infections. Additionally, the CDC reports that beef is one of the main sources of salmonella illnesses, along with meats like chicken and pork, because the meat can become contaminated before it even reaches your home by bacteria from the animal's stomachs. Meat can be hazardous. You might consume it without realizing what you're getting into because you can't see the microorganisms. Heat treatment is the best approach to prevent this kind of foodborne sickness that is cooking it. Currently, 145 Fahrenheit for steaks and roasts and 160 Fahrenheit for ground beef are the recommended temperatures. Next is potatoes. Green potatoes do not indicate an unripe potato. They indicate that you might be handling harmful food. The more time potatoes spend in bright, warm conditions, the more likely it is that they will begin to produce a substance called solanine. However, the green patch is nature's way of telling you that the chemical might be there since, in addition to solanine, aging potatoes also create chlorophyll, which gives them their grassy color. This substance can be hazardous at certain concentrations, causing symptoms like headaches, nausea, and even certain neurological issues. Before you cut the potatoes, make sure to trim out any sprouts and any green areas. If the entire potato is green, it should be thrown out. Next is pufferfish. The second most dangerous vertebrate in the world is this famed balloon-shaped fish. The golden poison frog wins first place. One pufferfish, or fugu as they are known in Japan, is 1,200 times more dangerous than cyanide and contains enough toxins to kill 30 adult humans. Have we mentioned that there is no cure? However, it doesn't seem to stop individuals from wanting to live life on the verge of poison. In Japan, chefs can receive in-depth instruction on how to handle and prepare pufferfish. Fugu is prohibited in the U.S. The fish can cost hundreds of dollars at certain upscale eateries. Next is elderberry. If you've ever dabbled with homeopathy, you've probably heard elderberries touted as a panacea for illnesses like the flu and colds. Not so fast, though. Raw elderberries, as well as the bark and leaves, are toxic. These processed items may make you think the beautifully violet orbs are safe to eat. According to the CDC, they include a substance that may result in cramping, numbness, disorientation, nausea, and vomiting. They can kill livestock and are harmful as well. Do not be concerned about discovering elderberries at your grocery store because they are not farmed commercially in the United States. You can come across cooked varieties that can be used without risk in anything from pies and compotes to syrups and jams. Just keep an eye out for the raw variety in the wild or even in complementary therapies that do not include processing and cooking. Next on our list is wild mushrooms. When it comes to foraged foods, you probably have understood since a young age that you shouldn't rely on the mushrooms that grow in your front yard or any yard for that matter, considering that wild mushrooms may be poisonous. In fact, the CDC states that as more of the poisonous death cap mushrooms, also known as Amanita phalloides, are growing, the number of poisonings caused by them is rising. 90% of deaths from mushrooms are caused by one particular fungus worldwide. Naturally, Not all wild mushrooms are dangerous or harmful. You might be able to gather a sizable crop if you happen to be alongside a skilled forager or an experienced mycologist, a person who studies mushrooms. Before making a purchase at the farmer's market, you should inquire about the seller's credentials. Next is rhubarb. You could find yourself hankering for your first strawberry rhubarb pie of the season as soon as winter's chilly temps start to fade. We certainly don't want to spoil the celebration, but we do want to let you know to be cautious around the rhubarb leaves. A substance called oxalic acid is found in rhubarb leaves. Oxalic acid poisoning in large doses can cause symptoms like diarrhea, renal failure, and breathing difficulties. Oxalic acid excess can occasionally even be fatal. Rhubarb leaves are frequently thrown away right away, leaving only the stalks to be used in recipes. If for some reason you do find these greens extremely delectable, just remember that it takes a lot to become hazardous. 10 pounds of rhubarb leaves would be a toxic dose. Next is tuna. The world's oceans are home to large fish with extended lives, including tuna. Sadly, mercury levels in the oceans are growing, which means fish are absorbing more of the metal into their flesh. You run the risk of developing mercury toxicity if you regularly consume tuna or any other large fish that is particularly prone to mercury absorption. Neurological problems including depression and irritability are symptoms. Over time, mercury levels can grow, which can cause mercury poisoning, which can cause symptoms like loss of coordination, hearing loss, and difficulty walking. This does not suggest that you stay away from delectable tuna. The fish is a fantastic source of lean protein and is bursting with heart-healthy lipids. Just be sure to keep an eye on your weekly intake and occasionally choose smaller fish to limit potential mercury absorption. Next is mung beans. Although the cinnamon-colored beans are wonderful in soups and bean salads alike, they can be poisonous if consumed uncooked or undercooked. Phytohemagglutinin, a poisonous protein, is present in uncooked kidney beans, PHA. It only takes a small amount of undercooked kidney beans to cause vomiting, nausea, and diarrhea. PHA levels drastically decrease when kidney beans are cooked, as opposed to just soaking in water to soften them. Make careful to replace the water after soaking them, then boil them until tender. Next is starfruit. Although the unusual yellow-green fruit makes a wonderful topping for patriotic cakes or classroom gift, starfruit can be harmful or even fatal to some people. The poison caramboxin can be found in several fruits. This toxin can accumulate in the bloodstream of persons with kidney illness, eventually making its way to the brain and producing symptoms including vomiting, weakness, and confusion. In extreme cases, it may potentially result in coma, death, or convulsions. You're safe if you don't have any kidney problems. Happy eating starfruit. Fruit seeds and fruit pits. Fruit pits and seeds aren't usually thought of as edible parts of the fruit. But if you find yourself munching on the hard, woody centers of pears, apples, or stone fruits, you might want to think twice. These pits and seeds contain amygdalin, a deadly substance that the body breaks down into cyanide. Now, if you ingest a cherry pit or a couple apple seeds by accident, will you experience the cyanide poisoning symptoms, which include lightheadedness, rapid breathing, and vomiting? No. The same is true for apple and pear seeds, as well as pits from stone fruits like apricots and peaches, and you need to consume dozens of them to reach toxic levels. However, if you find the hard pits delicious, it's best to avoid them or at the very least, consume them in moderation. Next is shellfish. Shrimp, clams, crab, lobster, mussels, oysters, and scallops can be fatal for some individuals due to one of the most severe food allergies. Anaphylaxis, a severe allergic reaction that can be fatal if not treated promptly, can be brought on by one bite in allergic persons. Others believe that the germs that live inside these seafood products are what makes them dangerous. This is especially true for raw shellfish, which, according to the CDC, is a major source of foodborne disease in the United States. While they are living in the ocean, these mollusks and shellfish filter the water through their bodies. They can take some of the germs and organisms in the water that could be dangerous and deliver them to you. In particular, raw oysters should be avoided since they may contain the Vibrio bacteria. Vibriosis infections can result in bloodstream infections, diarrhea, vomiting, and even death. Cooking the shellfish is the only way to eradicate these potentially dangerous germs. The CDC advises preparing fish to a temperature of 145 F and warming it to 165 F. They advise against eating seafood that is raw or undercooked. Next is cheese, dairy products, and raw milk. Rarely do SWAT teams invade farms, but when they do, you can know that it might have something to do with unpasteurized milk. Some states in the US prohibit the selling of raw or unpasteurized milk. Some severely limit the selling of these goods to farms or retail establishments. This is so they don't make people sicker. Dairy products such as raw milk have not undergone pasteurization. In other words, they have not been heated to eradicate or lessen the quantity of microorganisms that could be hazardous. Advocates of raw milk claim that the food is more nutritious and healthy before it is heated. But in actuality, your morning cup of milk may be teeming with potentially lethal bacteria. In reality, the CDC claims that over 127 incidents of E. coli, Salmonella, and Campylobacter were caused by raw milk. Children are more prone than adults to develop severe foodborne illness symptoms. Thus, a lot of those outbreaks include kids. Even foods manufactured with raw milk have the potential to be harmful. The germs may be present in raw milk cheeses like Camembert as well as in raw milk ice cream and yogurt. And lastly, sprouts. Alfalfa sprouts and other sprouts do best in warm, humid environments. That also happens to be the ideal environment for bacterial growth. Sprout-related foodborne illnesses are frequently linked to E. coli, Salmonella, and Listeria. Sprouts have been linked to 30 incidents of foodborne illness since 1996, according to Food Safety Gov. More vulnerable groups include young children, the elderly, those with weakened immune systems, and pregnant women. The FDA made an effort to give the sprout business safe growing procedures in the late 1990s as the trend for sprouts grew. They are still cooperating to make sprouts safe to eat today. They might be present at farmers markets and even in some supermarkets, but use caution.